unlimited explosions in PvE, and deep range one burst from the hip in PvP. Royal Executioner. The Destiny 2 Season of Defiance Fusion Rifle is our first craftable adaptive frame fusion. In PvE, we've got S-tier explosive options with incandescent and reservoir bursts, and perk combos to keep the explosions rolling without ever reloading. In PvP, you can take adaptive fusion range to all new distances with Offhand Strike, but is it enough to overcome the terrible base stats of Royal Executioner? It took me several trips back to the crafting table, but I can finally say this is a fusion rifle worth having. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what makes it tick. Adaptives have grown to be my favorite fusion archetype for the past few seasons in PvP. I ranked a rangefinder techie in Force and the Burden of Guilt as my #1 and #2 fusion rifles in the entire game, so I was really excited to see that we were getting a craftable adaptive fusion rifle in Destiny 2 Lightfall. And then it dropped, and I saw it had the base 15 zoom, no rangefinder, no high impact reserves, and no under pressure. Basically, any of the perks that make a fusion rifle stand above the rest were missing from this weapon. Then it got worse when I looked at the stats. I'm gonna rip into this fusion rifle for a second, but I promise we're going somewhere crazy with it. It's just going to start out rough. A bit of a journey. Stats wise, Royal Executioner is basically Dreambreaker, the adaptive fusion rifle from the moon. It differs only by a single stat here or there. Royal Executioner has one more range, Dreambreaker has one more stability, but overall, both of them are far worse than the other adaptive frame fusion rifles. Royal Executioner and Dreambreaker both have the lowest range, stability, and aim assist of any of them, sometimes by a significant amount. So we'll come back to what that means for PvP, but my first goal was to build this out for PvE, as despite the stats, we've got some banger PvE perks. Specifically Envious Assassin in the 3rd column and Reservoir Burst in the 4th column. Before I was even thinking about PvE, I was drawn to this combo thanks to watching Hinra do speed runs with it to clear out groups of enemies quickly. At first I thought it was incandescent, but then realized it was Reservoir Burst to take advantage of the synergy with Envious Assassin. So shout out to Hinra, please go check out the YouTube channel if you haven't. Absolutely insane Destiny 2 player and content creator. So, Reservoir Burst. When your mag is full, Reservoir Burst will give you a huge explosion on a kill, but it will also give your fusion shot 25% more damage. Perks that overflow your magazine synergize with this and allow every shot above the normal magazine capacity to do 25% more damage along with the explosion on an elimination. Envious Assassin gives up to 150% increase in magazine size as you rapidly get kills with your other weapons. You don't have to have Royal Executioner out, you just get kills with your other weapons. The amount it overflows your magazine will depend on how many kills you get within 10 seconds of each other. It says that the enhanced version of the perk will take away that timer, but I've heard from the Destiny scientists that it's bugged at the moment, so maybe hold off on that part. Regardless, 150% increased magazine feels wild. I ran double solar reserves on my chest armor so that I could stack up as much ammo as possible to see how far I could get with it. Reservoir Burst increases your base mag by 20% for just having the perk, so that puts Royal Executioner at 7. 7 times 2.5 equals 17.5, and as you can see here with Envious Assassin, I was able to hold 18 rounds in the magazine, and every one of those shots from 7 to 18 had Reservoir Burst explosions and the 25% increased damage active by default. I didn't have to do anything, it's just free extra damage. 12 shots of 25% extra damage with explosions. This is a weapon buff, so you could take it a step further by multiplying it by surge mods, and even further by stacking empowering buffs like Wells and Weapons of Light. Even without empowering buffs, just running solo with basic surge mods, you could stack 22% extra damage on your 25% Reservoir Burst buff, giving you 52% extra fusion damage for those 12 shots. If you want to know more about surge mods, I've got a whole video of that and I'll link it in the description. A quick tip on Envious Assassin, once it overflows your magazine, you have to use all your overflow ammo before Envious Assassin will overflow it again. So say you overflow it just a bit to 10, and then you swap off the weapon and keep slaying out, it'll just stay at 10 until you pull out the fusion and get the shots back down to 7. It won't continue to overflow the magazine until you do that. Now you could run incandescent in the last column for PvE too, but it would take some hefty convincing for me to give up so many shots of Reservoir Burst. Technically, the incandescent explosion does a bit more damage, but you won't be getting the 25% extra damage from Reservoir burst. And so many shots of that available with Envious Assassin is just too good. I have to mention the Grave Robber and Swashbuckler combo as well. That's a 33.3% buff after a melee kill, and Grave Robber will reload your magazine from reserves after every melee. No explosions, but if you have a melee heavy build, you can craft the enhanced version of Swashbuckler for 6.5 seconds of that damage buff that is refreshed every time you melee. Speccing out for PvE, I'd personally run Arrowhead Break for recoil control, accelerated coils for the battery, and a charge time masterwork to get that damage out faster. I know some will opt for more damage rather than faster damage, but this is just my preference. Before we get to the PvP builds, a quick reminder to subscribe if you've been enjoying the content. I'd love to dedicate more time to these, and every new like, subscribe, comment, and even sharing with your Discord brings me one step closer to that. Okay, PvP, this is where the journey really began. I started as I always do, maxing out the range and aim assist to see what I could get away with. Turns out I couldn't get away with much. Without under pressure, the low base stats just left no room for pushing Royal Executioner to any interesting places in PvP. My bolts consistently did not land where I wanted them to. Usually I can bump the recoil direction a bit with extended barrel and let a targeting adjuster mod help with the aim assist, but it wasn't until I doubled down on recoil direction that the fusion really started to shine. I tried using just a counterbalance mod, but you really have to go all out with Royal Executioner. Arrowhead Break and a counterbalance mod brings you to 100 recoil direction. It became a whole new weapon. I'm not even kidding when I say from this point on, I could spec the fusion out however I wanted to in the perk columns, and it still felt just as great. I didn't feel like I needed any extra stability. It was feeling perfect with projection fuse and a range masterwork as long as I had Arrowhead Break and the counterbalance mod. My next step was deciding which perks to run, and I was so excited for one combo in particular, Offhand Strike and Killing Wind. Offhand Strike pushes your damage, fall off, start, and end distance 1.45 times its normal range. On top of that, it gives you 30 stability, extreme accuracy, and keeps your accuracy cone tight when it would usually grow larger during the burst. We saw how amazing this was on Glacioclasm, and here it is no different. It changes your 12-meter hipfire range to 18 meters. This is great on its own, but I could not pass up the combination with Killing Wind, and it did not disappoint. Killing Wind buffs your mobility, handling, and range, and pushes your damage fall-off distance 5% further. So all these damage fall-off distance buffs stacked together let you fire from the hip to nearly 21 meters before damage fall-off begins. For context, my Tachyon Force with rangefinder that I love so much only gets to 19 meters before damage fall-off begins. And that's while ADS. Royal Executioner is doing 21 meters from the hip. Now, we don't have high impact reserves, so for high resilience guardians, we're gonna have to land 6 of the 7 bolts to get the 1 burst. Fortunately, orbs are pretty plentiful with the new mod system, and if you run Reaper, you'll probably have an orb to pick up after your first kill. Running just 2 Solar Surge mods will buff your solar damage 4.4% and is enough to push your damage to 5 bolt any resil. I ran this setup pretty much my entire time with Royal Executioner and it felt fantastic on follow-up shots. Having the Surge buff, Offhand Strike, and Killing Wind all working together had me feeling incredibly consistent at some crazy ranges. Okay, so we got it feeling great with a great distance perk combo. What about the other perks? Offhand Strike and Successful Warm-Up was a pairing I really loved on the reprised Wizen Rebuke Fusion Rifle. I played around with this combo quite a bit on Royal Executioner, but I feel like Successful Warm-Up just isn't as worth it on an adaptive frame versus having it on a high impact. Its 37.5% decreased charge time is heavily felt on high impacts, whereas on this adaptive fusion, the speed increase actually made the pre-fire feel awkward. If I pre-charged my shot and tried to stop it, it would fire anyways because it was too fast. But if I tried to pull the trigger once I was on a target, the charge wasn't fast enough. It just put me in a weird place. Even if I did like the charge time more, I felt the lack of Killing Wind distance on my Offhand Strike shots. Killing Wind was giving me over 2 meters of extra range with Offhand Strike, and so the extra speed from Successful Warm-Up just didn't feel worth it. Elemental Capacitor was another option on my mind and was actually the first one I tried out while trying to get Royal Executioner into a solid place in PvP. But as I mentioned earlier, extra stability really didn't change anything on this fusion for me. The recoil direction was the only stat that truly made a difference on my performance with the weapon. So Killing Wind is really the standout fourth column option for PvP. In the third column, I can see the argument for running Firmly Planted. If you just want a solid ADS shot from the fusion every time, running Firmly Planted and Killing Wind felt great to me. It was approaching Burden of Guilt level of consistency, but that's kind of where I draw the line. It wasn't quite at that level, and it really only felt at that level when Killing Wind was active with Firmly Planted. So at that point, why even use this fusion rifle if you have a solid roll on another adaptive fusion rifle? Maybe you've got a decent Burden of Guilt or Rangefinder Techie on, a great trinary system or Timeline's Vertex. Any of those would be a better fit for a great ADS shot on a PvP fusion rifle. If you're looking for a great adaptive fusion for every shot you take, you may have better options in your vault, but Royal Executioner makes a great long-distance, fast-paced, multi-kill fusion rifle. Also, this is the first craftable adaptive frame, so maybe you've just had bad luck with them and this is your chance to get a solid roll. I'm now listing all my recommended weapon rolls in my Discord under a new crafting guide section, so if you want a quick reference point or you're wondering what I think about a weapon before the video's up, I'll probably have it posted there. Link is in the description. This has been Legolas Flash. Until next time, GG.